are actually deeper divisions emerging between Europeans, how they look at that war. We have on the one side Spain, which is really becoming by now the one country, Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish leader, the one leader who's criticizing Trump the most, who does not want to spend 3.5% on defense, who denied the use of Spanish bases for that intervention. The Brits were also skeptical, but then changed their view. And then we have France and Germany, who really just try to say, well, we also didn't like the regime, and we will not pick a fight with Donald Trump over the fate of the Iranian regime. So at the moment, the Europeans are very much divided. And from a US side, the Europeans do not appear as particularly useful allies in this war.
What are some of the biggest fractures within the EU on this issue?
So there's on the one side the question of international law, right? I mean, the European Union and its members always pride themselves as being the one who uphold the rule of law, including international law. Then there is the risk of escalation. What if that really becomes a broader war? What if there is a new migration challenge coming from the war in Iran, especially for the southern member states like Spain, like Greece, like Italy, who have seen a lot of migrants coming from conflict regions in the Middle East in the last decade. And then, of course, there's a big question of how to handle Donald Trump. Is the right strategy a strategy of engagement or a strategy of standing up to Donald Trump? And views are increasingly changing on that, especially after the crisis over Greenland.
So that, I guess, goes to the broader issue, Liana, is just how are the countries in Europe, how are they viewing, I guess, the global world order? Is it in fact changing? Is it almost you can't rely on the U.S. or maybe rely on them less than you did in the past? It's more go it alone, if you will. Is that new world order, is that something that's being embraced by the European Union and member states?
Yeah, I mean, the nature of the European Union and its member states has been very different from the sort of era or the phase that we are living in now in global conflict. The European Union was built in cooperation, not integration, working with your allies, dialogue, diplomacy, and trade with your adversaries too. So the whole idea was very much of the European Union in its latest formation was very much an idea of the 90s. And now the European Union is changing. Now it has to use its free market tools, its trade tools to assert itself in a more volatile world. And it's certainly the speech of President Macron, who talked about a greater nuclear umbrella for his European neighbors, has been a very clear step that Europeans are looking beyond the United States, even and including on nuclear deterrence.
Are European governments preparing for any potential spillover risks from the recent escalations we've been seeing?
Yeah, so the European Union isn't particularly preparing for migration risks. I mean, I think that's the greatest concern, but also, of course, for Iran trying to retaliate in European countries by doing sabotage, terrorist attacks, using whatever networks they still or proxies that they have in Europe. That is certainly a concern right now. But most importantly, the biggest concern is how long will this war continue between the United States and Iran, and also how much further will it drive up energy prices at a time when Europe's energy prices were already much higher than energy prices in the United States?
Liana, about 30 seconds left here. What is the latest thinking from your part of the world as it relates to Ukraine?
Well, the problem with Iran is that it really crowds out any bandwidth that there is on Ukraine. That's why Friedrich Merz, the German chancellor, who was in Washington, D.C. yesterday, really tried to remind Donald Trump of that issue, saying, well, look, we need to make progress on Ukraine. The problem is that Vladimir Putin may look at this war in Iran, who has been supportive of Russia's war against Ukraine, who Vladimir Putin perceived, if not an ally, then at least a partner. Russia will not be amused by what is happening against Iran, and that might also decrease their appetite for constructive negotiations on Ukraine if they ever had that appetite.